Hello there, you are listening to The Screen Queen, where you'll be finding your favorite movie or your favorite television show and learning something new. You'll just have to listen to find out. Here is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there and welcome back to the show, Screen Team. As always, this is your female Tarantino, Samantha Parrish, and you are listening to The Screen Queen. So when I first heard about House of Gucci, I was a little intrigued. I spotted it on Lady Gaga's Wikipedia page, where it was only mentioned that she was playing Patrizia. And after a while, the movie finally comes out, and then nothing. You would think with a title called House of Gucci, with one of the hugest name brands, it'd be the hugest movie, and yet it just literally came and went. With a whole powerhouse and a great director at the helm, you would think it's great. And in some ways it is. But I can also see why this has been called the Oscar bait film of the century. Well, I wouldn't say it's called that, but when you go and watch Oscar bait films and House of Gucci takes number one, that's saying something. I've honestly been waiting to talk about this movie since the beginning of The Screen Queen, because it had been fresh to the relevance of when I started the show, and now finally I get the chance to watch it. My feelings have definitely changed about it now that it's aged a little bit, so here we go. So to preface this episode, I will try to keep this as close to the truth to what I have found. Since we are in a crime craze, we literally are still talking about the Menendez case, and every time something comes out, you always want to see what is the reality behind what is supposed to be a true story. And I'm going to try and do this service to what appears to be a disserviced story the best I can. So here we go. This is House of Gucci. Gucci has been around since before we were born. It is like the brand that we just know associated with being expensive and lavish. It's being referenced in songs. It gets referenced in movies. Like anyone that buys Gucci, you know they're really well off. But the story behind Gucci has never been mostly talked about. We just consume the brand and that's about it. So to hear a movie is coming out to explain, I never would have guessed in a million years the brand that I walked by in the mall had a son that got murdered by a ex-wife. Wouldn't have guessed it in a million years. House of Gucci follows Patrizia Reggiani, and she wants the finer things in life. So when she saw Maurizio Gucci at a party, she knew she had to have him. She did whatever she could to make Maurizio fall in love with her. And it didn't take her long to get that ring on her finger and make her way into the Gucci family. And just sort of whispered in people's ears about what to do with their shares and maybe give them to Maurizio. And this starts to drive a force in between Maurizio and his uncle and his very pastel cousin. Unfortunately, as much as Patrizia worked very hard to make sure that she had a pristine spot for the rest of her life, Maurizio divorces her. She unfortunately gave Maurizio enough information to kind of go on with his own life. And he's like, you know what, there are other finer things. I'm going to go for that. So Patrizia is not so happy about that. Not happy at all. And so she hires a hitman to kill him. The whole film is made to solely present that frozen moment of time. And that moment that has kind of been forgotten about with the way that Gucci moved on past the whole incident. When you look at the brand today, not many people talk about the murder that happened in Gucci. But that also serves as the most harrowing part of the brand that the family dynasty destroyed itself from the inside and outside. To see that it wasn't just Patrizia, but the whole family was a little bit out there. I mean, who doesn't have a toxic family? But look at the Gucci's. Yeah. It does give a very beautiful look at a very bleak family. Like, it was not looking good for them. But again, this is still loosely based off a true story. Every time I go into a biotopic, I have to remind myself I don't know these people. So the information that is given to me, whether it's trivia on IMDb or the way that this is written, who's to say this isn't plagiarized or fictionalized? And even though I do love that this is a very fashion-forward film that is extremely bold, as this name is, it still leads a heavy distraction to want to get the truth. So walking into this, it's very difficult to place what is fact and what is fiction. But I can tell you what is fact and fiction from what I know. So the things the film does get correct. Gucci did start out as a saddle company, and they did everything for the equine district. But then in the 50s, there was a transition to figure out what the next big thing was going to be. And fashion came up. Easy transition from having to make saddles and then make the most beautiful, expensive things across the globe, setting everything for life. And it has also been confirmed that Paolo Gucci, who's been the only one in the family to want to do something different, he really did try to do things differently, and he had multiple failures. It is interwoven a lot in this film. Yes, it's Oscar bait because it's really bold, overdramatic stuff with a very hellish story, kind of making it almost feel silly at times, but the history is still there. I gotta give credit where credit's due. You call a spade a spade. However, there was some stuff they left out. And I feel like this may have possibly hurt the film with the executive decisions around that. So in the film, Patrizia and Maurizio have a child together. In real life, Maurizio and Patrizia had 2 children, Alessandro and Allegra. And not just them, Paolo Gucci had 5 children from many relationships, and they weren't mentioned once in the film. And there is somewhat a reason for that than just skirming over the reality. Oftentimes, when someone is approached, they do have the choice if they want to be mentioned or if they just want to be a footnote. It is their choice to be included or not. I mean, this is a family tragedy on the big screen. It's a heavy thing to have to be confronted about and have that whole shablam come up again. Not entirely confirmed, but that's just a hypothesis that I have from the times that other people have requested to not be mentioned or just be given a different name for privacy issues. I mean, after all, Gucci does not belong to Gucci anymore. It's like in the People versus Larry Flynt that Larry Flynt and Althea Flynt had 2 children, but they never made it into the film. You know, something to think about. But in the whole grand scheme of the aftermath for the film, well, that does kind of play true to life. Patrizia Reggiani is out of prison. She was released in 2016, and she's working in the fashion industry. Big shocker. She works for a place called Beaux-Art, and so far that's been working out for her. And she also does not have a relationship with her daughters. Again, kind of on my last point as to why that's not really too highly important to give for that personal detail of the film. And you can kind of see a little bit of that glimpse there. And there is one more thing to the Maurizio and Patrizia story before I forget. Patrizia did suffer a medical setback. I can't quite remember what it was. I think it was a tumor. And she was sent a get well card by Maurizio, and, you know, that kind of gave her some hope, like, oh my God, Maurizio, but, like, realistically was probably written by a secretary because it was his name, but not his handwriting. So, I think that would just be one more scornful piece for the film. But I have to say, though, I have never seen a more stylized, fictional take on some of these things. But with that said, I don't know if this film could exist without the style. This is probably the most stylish film I think I've ever seen. And that's coming from someone like me that commits to a fit. A lot of people that know me in real life know I love my fashion and how I put certain ensembles together. The way Ridley Scott went into this movie with the style, some of it bleeding in from influences of Scarface and Sunset Boulevard and The Godfather, like, yeah, that does feel like concrete pieces to use as inspiration for a film like this. It adds to the boldness of it all. If you're going to cover a bold name like Gucci, you got to have a bold film. And it truly is a fucking work of art. I know this film is, like, littered with inaccuracies and some pieces kept out, but damn, it does represent Gucci in the way that they've been known for being very bold. And that does go hand in hand very well. I'd have to say my favorite part that really suckered me in for this film was Maurizio going on to the patio and you hear Here Comes the Rain Again by the Eurythmics, and he takes some photos. Like, that felt just like cinematic art to transition into the next space of this whole thing. I know Maurizio's not going to make it at the end, but I got to see a glimpse into what was looking like beautiful beginnings to go into the family business and get to travel and do exotic things and whatnot. Like, it's not going to go well in the end, but it does really thrust you forward into this fast-paced fashion life. So I'm going to make a hard segue and talk about the lady of the hour, the lady in this movie, the person that I have followed for many years that had me at Poker Face, Lady Gaga. When it was announced about Lady Gaga going into this movie, I was thrilled. I have followed her since she first came out with Just Dance and then getting into Poker Face, Love Games. I can name almost every song of hers. A majority of my friends know that she is one of my favorite singers. I begrudgingly put myself through Machete Kills just to see her in the movie, and I love the song she did for that film as well. Still play on a regular basis. I loved her in American Horror Story playing the Countess, just completely showing that, you know, she can do everything. I know there's kind of like a Mary Poppins sociopathic mannerism to giving too much pride to someone, but Gaga earns all the fucking praise for what she's done and watching her all these years. I was a little late in the game for A Star Is Born, so that still has some time to grow on me, but for the most part, I do like it. And getting to see her in House of Gucci was amazing. And then getting to hear that she's going to be in Joker Folie, I'm like, ooh. But you probably wouldn't guess that House of Gucci is the film that almost broke Gaga. In the behind-the-scenes featurette, Ridley Scott and Lady Gaga both recounted how this was a difficult role for Lady Gaga, and she got too into her character that there could have been a psychotic break in the midst of this. He had to just kind of take her aside and be like, I gotta give you a hard soundboard check. You're getting way too into this role, and I'm watching you just completely unravel, and I don't want that to happen. And, like, solid thing he did there, because she's gone on to say, like, if it wasn't for him, like, you know, snapping his fingers to make sure she couldn't get out of this and being a good soundboard, it would have done detrimental things. Like, look at Elvis I know, poor reference because of Austin Butler, but Austin Butler could not break the Elvis twang forever because of how invested he got into Elvis. There are numerous actors that have gone on to state like what had happened to them getting too immersed into someone else's life, and it has a lot of consequences, and now it's being talked about to prevent that in the future by keeping a closer eye on the mental health of some of these very entertaining people, to not hurt themselves for the craft they love. And to hear this was the film that made Lady Gaga go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs is crazy. Considering she's about to play a character who's obsessed with Mr. J, it's wild. Like, it makes me joke and talk about the upcoming Joker film where she's like, oh, I got experience. I was in House of Gucci. Sorry. And it shows how invested she was. I remember the post she put up on Instagram leading up to the premiere where she would be in her regular attire and just go, father, son, and House of Gucci. And that was also the line in the trailer. And to find out that Lady Gaga made that up on the spot, you know, in true Gaga nature, because she makes miracles happen just like that. Now, the next part I want to talk about is the music in this movie. And I feel like it's not talked about enough. Now, I do have to say that I'm a little biased because I am someone that grew up living in their mother's 1980s CD collection. So that's all I had listening to growing up, and I don't regret it. It is a part of my identity as Sammy. So to hear the 80s music in here, I was surprised to hear songs that I don't normally hear in films. I like that they went a little bit within the core of the 80s to make a unique time capsule to not only represent the Guccis, but represent the 80s. It just made the film bleed with so much of that era, and I love it for that. Half the time, I just put on the movie knowing I get to listen to a few of my core favorite 80s songs being played in there. The funniest thing looking at this cast, though, they have aged in a weird way, and it hasn't even been 5 years to draw comparisons that tie back to House of Gucci. Like looking at Adam Driver, for him to play Maurizio Gucci, and then he would go on to go play another famous Italian with Enzo Ferrari. It's a huge testament to the power that Adam Driver has an actor, and it's why he's been one of the names that I look forward to seeing to in a movie. But it is a hilarious coincidence that this is now starting to be a big staple of his career. I don't know if it's going to be permanent, but you kind of can't help but look at the irony. Another one, knowing that you have both the Joker and Harley Quinn within this film within almost a 10-year radius of each other, that's also kind of hilarious. You have what is the worst Joker and what we're building to be the next good Harley Quinn in the same film. I think gives a little bit of more points to the film knowing there's another bizarre DC tie-in to looking with all of these. Another, and this, I just have to say it because this is hilarious, within the year of House of Gucci. Salma Hayek, who plays Pina, the fortune teller slash assassin finder, her husband, who is a French investor, owns Gucci as of 2021. Therefore, by proxy, the actress in the film owns Gucci in a Gucci film. So it's almost ironic that she's playing a counterpart to a story that is involved with her spouse. That's that's amazing. You know, it really makes me appreciate this film. I've never seen these circles that interconnect with each other so much than a Ryan Murphy production. And I do have to admit, I do like Jared Leto in this movie. I don't like that that's a sentence that exists in my mouth, but it does. When Jared Leto is doing something that I can tell there's a lot more layers. It's not diluted. It's not egotistical. This was a very layered performance with having a man like Paolo Gucci that, yeah, on the outside, he had bankrupt places and 5 children and so many things going on, but he had ambition that wasn't listened to. I think if that quality wasn't there, given the amount of sympathy that it deserved, I don't think it would have been a very powerful performance to see the deceit more, and he does play an integral part in that deceit of how he got gaslit. You know, gives a little bit of consideration to his performance. I don't like giving him too many points, but I'll give him this one. And I didn't really have a spot to put this, but this might be the film that has my favorite Al Pacino scream ever. And that is a man that is known solely by a very expressive reaction. No matter what, they're always very visibly unique. And because of that staple, watching him kind of have some fun with this character was very enjoyable. But to hear him finally scream was the most hilarious thing I may have ever experienced in this movie. I know it's not supposed to be. It's actually downright tragic that this whole family lost everything, but when you have someone like Al Pacino who's known for screaming in his roles, you kind of can't help yourself, you know? So for one last little story about House of Gucci, this is probably by far my favorite piece of trivia for it. There was a sex scene between Patrizia and Pina. And knowing that almost made its way into the film, I don't know what that would have done. I feel like that would just kind of would have been fan service. I don't know too much about Pina than being the psychic that didn't see it coming, that she would end up going to prison, but that someone would play her in the future that would end up owning Gucci. But, you know, that's where we're at. And I can see why that would not make it to the film. But both the actresses have confirmed that it was pretty steamy, like it was given the Cruel Intentions scene a run for its money. But that is such a almost like funny thing to have a part of this film, to see that there's still some life being put into this movie, that everyone clearly had a great time and had no problem having to reference moments that they worked on this movie. And that's kind of what I take away from my final points, is this. It's not a perfect film, but it's not a bad film, is the best way that I can sum up what House of Gucci is like. There are things you kind of can't unsee for the holes within the story, but this being proposed as an insight to how dysfunctional the dynasty of the Gucci family is. Take the recent Menendez series for an example. It's a mixed story. It doesn't have all the facts. This is just from what we know, and House of Gucci was kind of given the same treatment. I kind of give the film some face value that I had to do some homework to figure out what really happened behind the scenes, but I've just become accustomed to that we're not really going to be getting the whole story. But you can see how some of the story is there. And then you can figure out what else really happened. That's why the information exists, to be able to know it for ourselves. I feel like this film is presented as too hyped to think it's going to have every single detail in piece included. It's not going to happen for every biotopic. And House of Gucci, just one of many biotopics that just glosses upon what it can reveal about the story, and the rest is kind of a mystery. But it's a very stylish mystery. But in a way, I'm kind of glad that there is an awareness to how flawed the film is, so it doesn't get credibility for knowing the entire story. But it was a good try at making the story, but it does serve the brand in a way that you would want to see. It is very stylized to perfection to make this be a Gucci film. I can look at it and go, yeah, I think that definitely suits the brand of Gucci. I can't ignore the flaws, but I can't ignore the flawless things within this movie. And I think the best way to send this off is a direct line that is said in the movie, where Maurizio says, "We are products of our past, but we don't have to be prisoners of it." I don't know if Maurizio would actually have said that or did actually say that, but that's good enough for me. So that is gonna do it for this episode about House of Gucci. This was worth the wait. Getting to talk about how it aged was remarkable. But now is the time to move on to the highly anticipated event. The event that I look forward to every year, and that is the Halloween series. But here's the catch. I already have that planned. Next week's episode, for the first week on the Halloween series, I'm having my friend Ann Lowe back on the show. And we've been discussing what's going to be the first episode, and that's for us to know and you to find out. But until then, you can catch up with me on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen if you want to shoot me a recommendation or talk about some of the good moments of House of Gucci. That'd be Gucci with me. And if you're looking for another way to listen to the Screen Queen, I am now available on YouTube. I feel like that's the best way if you really want to get your thoughts about a specific episode, because it was brought to my attention that you can leave a review for the show, but you can't really have an individual conversation about that, and you can have that on YouTube. Isn't that pretty cool? And as always, I like to talk about my book series that has slowly been coming into my audience. You can find my book series Inglorious Inc. and its prequel, The Company of Crime, on Amazon, but I have that bad boy available in the description box. Alrighty, you all take care now and stay Gucci. This is your Screen Queen, signing off. Bye-bye!